This video is powered by KR Mangalam University.
US allies are still quietly adhering to Mojtaba's new rules for the Strait of Hormuz, even as Trump lashes out and vows that Washington will never bow to Tehran's demands. Trump has rejected Iran's latest peace plan in angry public statements, yet at least one US ally appears to be effectively following Mojtaba's orders in Hormuz, choosing caution over the president's confrontational rhetoric. If a US allied supertanker no longer fully trusts the American Navy to protect it in these contested waters, what does that say about shrinking confidence in Washington's security guarantees? My name is Aisha Varma. Let's take a look at this report. A supertanker carrying Iraqi crude crossed the Strait of Hormuz on May 10th, according to reports, making a rare and closely watched transit through one of the world's most tense waterways. The ship used a route designated by Iran's armed forces, as reported by Tasnim News, and relayed by Iran International, indicating that it followed corridors effectively approved by Tehran rather than relying on US naval protection. The tanker later left the strait and was tracked in the Gulf of Oman, continuing its journey onward after completing the risky passage. Now, the tanker sails under the flag of Malta, a member state of the European Union and a security ally of the United States, according to marine traffic and other vessel tracking data. Now, reports say the supertanker switched off its trackers at points during the voyage to avoid potential Iranian attacks in Hormuz, a move that underscores how precarious and covert tanker traffic has become under the current blockade. This development was made public just after the US president rejected Iran's peace plan, highlighting the contrast between Trump's hardline and the more cautious Iran-aligned navigation choices being made at sea. The US president, on May 10th, issued a swift rejection of Iran's response to the American peace proposal, dismissing Tehran's counteroffer as unacceptable and signaling that the diplomatic deadlock would continue. Oil prices then surged on May 11th amid growing concerns that the 10-week-old conflict would drag on, with markets reacting nervously to the renewed risk of prolonged instability and supply disruption. Iran's proposal had focused on ending the war on all fronts, including halting the parallel Israel-Lebanon conflict, in an attempt to wrap the wider regional fighting into a single comprehensive settlement. Tehran demanded compensation for war damage and a clear affirmation of its sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, insisting that any durable peace must recognize its control over the crucial waterway. It also called on the United States to end its naval blockade and to guarantee that there would be no further attacks, making the lifting of military and economic pressure a central condition for agreement. Tehran further called for the release of its frozen overseas assets and a short-term relief on oil export restrictions to ease the impact of the sanctions regime. Iran asked the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control to suspend sanctions on Iranian oil sales for 30 days, presenting this as a confidence-building measure during the negotiation phase. The proposal also demanded an end to the naval blockade around its ports and key maritime trade routes, arguing that the blockade has caused major economic disruption. Sources told Iranian media that the counter-proposal includes a clause on Iranian management of the Strait of Hormuz, giving Tehran a central role in controlling and monitoring traffic. Washington has repeatedly rejected any Iranian-led control over the Strait of Hormuz, describing the idea of Tehran managing the choke point as unacceptable and a threat to global shipping. The Iranian proposed framework reportedly includes a 30-day negotiation period after a ceasefire takes hold, during which both sides would work towards converting a temporary truce into a more permanent settlement. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reported that Iran could be open to temporarily pausing uranium enrichment as part of an interim deal. However, Tehran is said to be willing to accept only a far shorter pause than the 20-year suspension that the US has reportedly proposed in its own draft plan. Iran also reportedly rejected any demand to dismantle or cap the number of its nuclear facilities, insisting that its nuclear infrastructure remains a sovereign right. US President Donald Trump reportedly fumed over Iran's counter-proposal, posting on Truth Social that he considered its terms totally unacceptable, despite the existing ceasefire. Trump said he had reviewed the proposal and rejected its core elements outright, including Iran's demand for control of the Strait of Hormuz and the scale of sanctions relief. Meanwhile, Iranian officials insisted the plan was based on defending Iran's rights and sovereignty rather than accommodating US red lines. A source told Tasnim that the negotiating team was not drafting proposals to please Trump, but to ensure Iran's security and economic interests were protected. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian reiterated that dialogue does not mean surrender, stressing that talks are a tool of diplomacy, not concession. In a statement on Sunday, Pezeshkian declared that Iran would never bow down to the enemy, framing the counterproposal as a firm but conditional path towards ending the war.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.